I'm meteorologist Danielle Moss, and we have definitely had a busy 4th of July weekend. In fact, there were several incidents on the water on several lakes across the state. We also heard about a situation where an 18-year-old was actually struck by lightning when a severe thunderstorm warning was issued in Fannin County. In fact, we have Robert Poole with us today, and he is going to be talking a little bit about this. He is actually the Fannin County Emergency Management PIO, which is Public Information Officer. Good afternoon, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So when we talk about these isolated showers and thunderstorms, sometimes they just kind of grow and get increasingly intense. And I was watching the radar that day. I was actually off on 4th of July, and there was this little small cell that was in Fannin County, and it just increasingly grew very, very fast. And the National Weather Service issued that severe thunderstorm warning. And all I was thinking is, man, it's 4th of July. I know people are outside. I hope everyone got inside okay. Not even thinking, even myself, the lake is there. Can you talk a little bit about what happened, kind of take us through that afternoon and walk us through exactly what happened that afternoon there in Fannin?
I mean, it was hot, but a beautiful day otherwise. And I actually spoke with a friend of mine that was on the lake and witnessed the incident. And he said they were out there. It was, clear skies, and they noticed what looked like a little rain off in the distance, but there was no thunder in the distance, no lightning in the distance, no real warning. And they were actually at a dock, and he said it started sprinkling, and his wife made a comment about a couple of kids on some jet skis riding around in the rain. And he said, well, they're already wet. I'd be out there having fun too. And he said about 20 seconds later, he witnessed this young man get struck while he was moving on the jet ski. And he said initially he thought he just jumped off because it scared him, but it was clear a friend of his tried to circle back around and rescue him and turned his jet ski over trying to get him. So he went out to render aid, and another gentleman met him out there about the same time and got him up on a jet ski and took him back to shore. And I'm told that there was a nurse on scene that did CPR for a short period, and he regained consciousness and was transported to the hospital and released later just with some minor burns. But they said there was no warning. It just literally came out of nowhere. And we got the call at approximately 4:33, and I think the alert came out on our social media that's automatic about 4:44. So he got struck just minutes before the alert came out.
Right, and I think that's very important because when you say no warning, I completely understand that because we always tell people when it roars, go indoors, right? You're always listening for that thunder. You're always looking for that intense downpour, especially if you're on a lake and you're thinking, okay, where should I go? Where's the safe place to go,
Right.
especially if you're on that water? What should people do if they find themselves in a situation where there are no warning signs? You're doing everything right. You have your life jacket on, you're not doing anything crazy on your watercraft, but what should you do if you find yourself in a situation where you are kind of caught off guard by one of these pop-up summertime storms?
If you're actually out on the water, it's a very vulnerable spot because you are the highest point typically out in the water. So the best thing you can do is get low in the boat. And if you're in a metal boat, try not to touch, the frame. And if you're not, just try not to touch anything metal, but just getting as low as you can, is really all you can do if you're just caught that quickly. And you are mentioning the life vests and normal safety items, but just getting low as you can if you're just caught like that.
Right, and that's kind of the thing that we always try to tell people is to kind of be prepared. You have to always prepare for worst case scenarios because you never know when you can find yourself in a situation where, things kind of just took a turn for the worse, even though you were doing everything right. Talking a little bit more about the specific situation that afternoon, how did people get the young man from the lake to the marina there?
There was a bunch of people that witnessed it, but a couple of them had their own personal jet skis, and they actually went out and laid him over the seat of another jet ski. And it was very close to the marina, which was fortunate. So they put him over the seat of another jet ski and just took him straight into the marina. So he was already on shore when our first crews arrived on scene.
That's good to hear that there are so many good Samaritans that were in that area. For people who might be onlookers to a situation like that and they want to help, Do you think that they should just automatically jump into action, or should they be waiting because there could be still some electrical charge? Or what would you think is the best way to handle that situation if you want to just jump right into action and help out in a situation like this
It,
one?
it's a very hard call to make. We personally, we preach scene safety. If we get hurt in the process, we're of no use to the actual victim. So it's just a tough judgment call. You have to be safe. If you don't think you can safely get out there and render aid, you might become part of the problem, which is going to require more of our resources and put more of our people in harm's way. So it's a tough call. There's no perfect answer for that. This worked out well. The people went out there to rescue them. Nobody else was hurt, and things worked out well. Doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's dangerous, but it's human instinct to help. So I get it, but it's a tough call.
That is, especially when you see something like that happen, especially with an adult, a child, or anything of that nature, you immediately want to jump in and help out in any type of a situation. Also, is he okay? I do want to check on his status. I know that is a very scary
Yes,
situation, especially being struck by lightning. Is he okay? Is he recovering well?
he is. Yeah, he was discharged later that same day, I believe. It's my understanding that he had some minor burns. I mean, they could clearly see an entrance and exit, but it's my understanding that he's doing fine.
Well, that is great to hear for sure. Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you would like to add about summer safety, especially on the lakes? I know that, it is just really the first kind of going into the second week of July, but people are going to be out. They're going to be enjoying their summer, and they're going to be enjoying everything that it has to offer, especially those off days. Are there any other safety tips that you would like to tell people as they go forward and make their plans during this nice summer here?
Stay hydrated and listen to your meteorologist. I mean, these storms that we've been seeing just they're very quickly developing storms and can really catch you off guard. And so, I mean, just a simple check of the weather sometimes is worth a lot. You don't want to get stuck out in one of these storms.
That's great advice there. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Poole. I will definitely make sure that we keep in touch, and we will continue to follow this story if there are any other updates. But I'm glad you were able to come on this afternoon and give us an update and kind of provide some safety tips for people going forward.
Great. Thank you for having me.
So the second part of that story is, how did this young man get help? So we have definitely just finished talking to Robert Poole, who is the Fannin County Emergency Manager. And now we have Don. Don, tell everyone what your position is and how you played a role in this young man's kind of rescue that evening.
So I work as a paramedic on the ambulance, and we responded to the report of someone that had been struck by a bolt of lightning while on a jet ski in the lake. When we arrived, bystanders had brought the young man in. I understand that they put him across the seat of another jet ski and took him into the dock. And if you can imagine, it was a little chaotic once we got in there and we started assessing his possible injuries.
I can only imagine even hearing the call, especially on 4th of July. I know that you all had a very busy weekend, especially being first responders. Hearing that someone was struck by lightning, what is the first thing as a paramedic that goes through your head when you hear a call like that?
So my first reaction was, wow, how rare. My second reaction is, when we hear something like that, we start thinking about the possible injuries that the person could have, such as cardiac arrest, respiratory arrest. They could have orthopedic fractures. They could have an entrance and or an exit wound.
And I talked to Robert a little bit about, bystanders that want to, jump in and spring into action and help in a situation like this. If you, were someone that saw an incident where, someone was struck by lightning and you wanted to help that person, what is the best way to help if you, after you call 911, obviously, what's the best way that you can help or that you would suggest someone to help a victim of a lightning strike?
So my first thought with that is risk versus reward. You don't want to injure yourself. You don't want to become a victim. So you have to be very careful and make sure that if you do intercede, that you can very safely and very quickly get the person out of that area. I mean, obviously, lightning was striking. That storm came out of nowhere, absolutely out of nowhere. And they were very close to the marina, so it actually worked out.
That's one thing that Robert and that we were talking about. I kind of saw that storm just develop just a little bit on the radar. And you're right, it literally intensified so quickly. And I think, if I remember, when they issued that severe thunderstorm warning, it was within minutes that he was struck by that lightning bolt. And I think that that is kind of, abnormal for something like that to happen, especially right away. But sometimes in the summer, when we see some of these isolated showers pop up, they can get so intense because it is so warm outside and the atmosphere is just kind of ripe for that storm to grow in size. As a paramedic, I know that you see all types of emergencies and things like that. When you got to the scene, what was, obviously you're looking around to assess everything, but after you assess things, what was your first thought seeing that young man that had been struck by lightning?
So when we arrived, it was a torrential downpour. We made our way to the back of the marina where he was in a sheltered area. We immediately started assessing him for injuries. We looked all over for entrance and exit wounds. We made sure that he was breathing, he was responsive. All those things were good. He, of course, he was a little out of it. He'd just been through a very traumatic situation. And like so we just began our assessments, and we came up with a definitive plan to get him out of that area and onto one of our trucks.
Right, which is so very important because I know you all have to act swiftly but also safely as well. When you are in a situation as a paramedic and there is a torrential downpour, how does that hinder your aid, or what kinds of steps do you have to take to make sure that you are providing the perfect care, the best care possible for those victims and patients?
So that day, we very quickly made it inside of the marina, the dock area, and treated him. Our problems ran into when we started to take him out because it's still raining. There's still lightning popping. Thunder is just outrageous. All those things were still going on, and we just very quickly got him into an ambulance where he was safe and we were safe.
That's good to hear, to know that no other elements were playing a part in what happened that evening. And I know that when you said that you were looking for entrance and exit wounds, for people who don't know, if you're struck by lightning, why were you looking for those entrance and exit wounds on that young man that day?
So sometimes if you're struck by electricity, and that's what lightning is, you'll have a spot where it enters your body, and then very often you will have an exit wound where it exits your body, and it can do damage anywhere between point A and point B.
And that is a very scary situation because, like you said, the electricity going through your body, that's another reason why you worry about cardiac arrest and things of that nature. How often do you all see lightning strikes in a situation like this and just like in general?
In my career, I've treated 4 people that have had lightning strikes. It doesn't occur every day. It's pretty rare.
That is almost an alarming number because you're thinking, I know you see a lot of emergencies on a day-to-day basis, but only 4, that's crazy to think about. Just 4 people ever struck by lightning. How long have you been working as a paramedic?
I have been in the public safety realm since about 1989, 1990, so 35, 36 years, somewhere in that area.
Wow.
Typically with lightning, we see house fires. We see that it hits things on the ground, a propane tank, things like that, but it's pretty rare to hit a person.
And that's what makes this so scary. Do you have any advice for people who might see a situation like this as a bystander, or usually when lightning strikes, you as a person, there's not much that you can do, but if you are a bystander and you see someone, I know that you said, risk versus reward, is there any other things that you would like to say as far as being safe is concerned in a severe thunderstorm warning, or if just a regular thunderstorm as well?
My first thought would be to try to find shelter and protect yourself and anybody that's with you. Don't venture out into it. Of course, situations change, but it's just a huge electricity. It's lightning. It can hurt you. It can kill you. So be very careful with it. If the general lay public is interested in helping with someone that's had a lightning strike, the 2 things we watch for are cardiac arrest and respiratory arrest, and knowing CPR, you might be able to help save a life because brain death starts between 6 and 10 minutes.
That is great information to know. And I know a lot of people, you know, they want to help out. And we do have some good Samaritans here in Georgia. So we hope that even if people are visiting, that, you know, they remember these tips and things that they can do to help out. And Don, I really do appreciate you being here and taking the time to talk to me this afternoon. And I know that you are a first responder. So not only do I thank you for being here, but I also thank you for your service and thank you for everything that you do in the community. I know that young man also thanks you for being there for him that day.